I've been doing Informix work about 38 years almost now, so I do know a little bit about it. I can speak it. I'd like to talk to you about what is coming in VNext as well as in 1410 FC10, and take any questions in real time or at the end, depending on what you wish to do. Before I start, I would also like to apologize for my inability to attend last time. I had a family health emergency, which was unavoidable and happened very close to the time I was actually supposed to present. My apologies, and I hope it won't happen again, believe me. So, VNext is an interesting release. It's going to be about raising product limits that have been in the product for a long time. And I think you'll find as we get to that point in the presentation that some of these things will make some of the issues that some of our customers that have large data growth be very happy, because I think their problems will go away. So we have the standard presentation slide for the lawyers. As I say, we're going to talk about 1410 FC10 first, and then what's in VNext. So FC10, the CSDK for 4.5 XC10 was released on Linux Intel 32-bit to aid in the customer upgrades to 1410. This is a relatively new feature, new release. We used to do this. We stopped doing it for the early releases of version 14, but we found that customers had issues upgrading from versions 12 and less to version 14, especially if they were on 32 bits, for example. And so here we've done this to help alleviate that problem. There's been some changes in the code set conversion for the CLV char, LVAR char TR type, starting in 1410 XC10. Code set conversion is done if the client and database locales differ when the particular type is used. I'm not going to try to say that again. I butchered it terribly. And for more information in this presentation will be made available to you at the end. You can click the link here for the LVAR char pointer host variable. The JDBC Secure Sockets Layer TLS internal connection APIs have been reworked to enable encrypted connections from more Java and Cypher combinations. Old code from the JDBC was written for old versions of Java. Times have changed for Java, and newer Java versions 8+, for example, in releases, don't use the same old IBM variations for setting SSL and TLS contexts. Updates to the JDBC driver now defer to the Java virtual machine for ciphers and the TLS level located at the link shown here on the screen. Finally, Java is being removed from the Informix bundle as of 1410 FC11. Currently, this is scheduled for release in Q4 of 2023. Customers will need to provide their own Java. If you have questions, I presently cannot see them because I have my screen up full. I have a small laptop screen, so I would appreciate if somebody would let me know if there is a question. Finally, 1410 XC10 is now available in the Informix container, available as part of the newly released 4.66 Informix Cloud Pak for Data. And now we come to VNext. So for many, many years, Informix has been known as the database that can dynamically scale with memory, CPU, and disk configured to scale to huge values. That scaling can hit some walls, however, on some of our internal default maximum under the cover values representing Informix product limits. Other limits can be hit due to data growth, exploding at record volumes, causing machines, storage, CPUs, and memory to get faster cheaper and bigger. Machine-generated data has been driving this data growth. Legacy limits in some cases from the era of 16 or 32-bit computing have been hit. When did we last change our product limits? Way back in version 10, March of 2005, and recently, customers have been hitting them. For example, the maximum number of pages in a partition is the one that seems to be hit the most. And when that happens, customers have to do real-time changes to their product layout and configuration and the database configuration. Fragmenting oftentimes by expression, having to choose what that expression is in real time, it's a bit of a problem. Since the product is still in development at this point for the next release, actual new limit numbers will not be stated here, nor will I comment on them. But the ones that are changing, the actual limits, are listed in a few slides. The final numbers per limit will be much higher than what they are presently. These are the result of specific changes requested by customers over the years, as well as the IBM and HCL Informix product management and development staffs. This was sort of a joint venture. And these numbers will be high enough to future-proof your business. Hardware will become the new issue. After all, the problem has to move somewhere. The good result of this is that there will be less downtime and increased performance with near infinite scalability. Obviously, it can't be infinite, but it can be near infinite. Future-proofing your business. Numbers are droll and they can be dull, but what can you do with larger page sizes? Much larger chunks, much larger row size, larger timestamp format, more maximum pages per partition, or maximum rows per page, larger index key sizes. The possibilities here can be endless with 64-bit and beyond computing. Everything gets faster, more in memory as possible, and less disk on I/O. And everything data-wise in memory is possible for today's databases. And that would be really speedy. It also makes possible for Informix new machine architectures currently in the labs where there's no spinning disk, or disk for that matter, all persistent memory and all the data in memory. The iPad, long time ago in a land far, far away, right, was just the beginning. The maximum instance size for Informix is in low petabytes presently. What it will be in VNext will be much larger. So the next several slides, we'll look at some of the items. There's about 32 of them listed here that will be in the next release, if not the first sub-release of VNext, certainly the second or third, depending on the development time cycle. The idea is to increase the existing Informix product limits, to lower the total cost of ownership with even greater business continuity and an ability to massively scale a database. Customers with big instances on very fast hardware are generally impeded right now by several maximums dictated by our architecture. And so, as I indicated a little bit ago, they need larger chunks and partitions, larger pages, and more rows to a page. So we're going to be adding a new row ID format. There'll be more rows to a page, giving us better I/O and utilization of space, using larger partitions. Running out of storage space will be the thing that we have happen much less. Larger partitions. The new tables will take advantage of this by default. Existing tables will have to be rewritten to take advantage of larger partition sizes. There's a new page address format allowing for a much larger chunk size. Larger chunks will exist right out of the box. There'll be more rows per page, significantly raising the number of rows per page. Larger page sizes are planned, but at this moment, as of right now, we have not actually started that work yet. So that will be likely one of the things that will happen in future fix packs. And the timestamps moving to an 8-byte from a 4-byte measure, it'll fix the present ability to have incremental archives and use by default. Understand the incremental archives don't work presently because there's problems here. And this will also give us the ability to have larger index keys. So all that is coming. There is something to consider in doing all this. And that is that once you have done it, once you have gone to VNext, these changes will not be revertible. I say again, once you have gone to VNext, these changes will not be revertible. Some limits that won't change, at least not presently, not contemplated. So there's not going to be a new DB space type right away. The changes that we're talking about doing will be handled in the existing DB space formats. New partition number format will not change. More DB spaces, we're not going to do that right now. We don't see a benefit to that. More partitions per DB space will not change. So we will have larger partitions, but not more of them. And more chunks isn't a change that we think will bring a significant benefit. And the maximum row size will be changing, but not right away. Probably in later VNext after we see what we have done with the changes that we're contemplating at this particular moment. So one of the things to keep in mind here is that we've chosen some of these very deliberately. And we've chosen some things that we're not going to do very deliberately based on real history that's in our support archives. So for example, were we to add more DB spaces and more chunks, we have several customers that are very large right now, and they're approaching some limits in terms of performance at the very, very high end that most users never see. So adding more capability to that might not be the best thing in the world if what we already have at the high end is giving us some issues. So that's one of the reasons why you see this particular slide in what we're not going to do. So we've talked about changes to the limits. That doesn't mean that we're ignoring what our customers have asked for. Yes, our customers asked for those things in the previous 2 slides, but these are some specific requests. Some time back, we said that we were going to be paying attention to the votes in AHA. This is where our end user customers decide what they want. And so we have chosen several of these. You'll see on the next several slides. They will be in VNext. Obtaining the query plan of a running query, I think, is something we talked about. It's there. You don't know oftentimes how an existing query is actually running, so you can see one that's running and get its query plan and make determinations. Typically, queries that involve lots of sequential scanning become a problem. Knowing what that actual query plan and the table it's doing the sequential scan on will matter. With this capability, you'll be able to do it. We are moving to allow customers that have smart blobs to store the data externally in directories of your own choosing and outside of the database. The user will then be responsible for your own backups, restores, and replication of the large objects. So this is good. We have this going on right now, at least one of our customers, and it seems to be working out pretty well. They're happy. Typically, this is in customers that scan lots and lots and lots of documents, for example, as part of the application and store it. They'll now be able to store these externally. A smart blob space will still be required for all smart blob metadata, and this will still be maintained by the server in terms of logging, recovery, and replication. Parallel table level restore with ArcChecker. ArcChecker is a utility that we've had with our product for quite a while. It's not new. We're enhancing its capabilities here. Presently, it's implemented serially, so it can take many hours to do a complete parallel table level restore, table level restore, complete depending on the size of your table. We're working to parallelize this functionality for much faster execution time by taking a phased approach. Phase 1, given a level 0 backup request, ArcChecker shall scan all DB spaces specified in the ACDBS instead of scanning each individually. And then phase 2, the large performance benefits will be seen in this phase 2 with logical log staging and logical log apply threads being done in parallel, which currently is planned for the next point release. CDC log capture will now be able to be done from a secondary server. It frees the processing power on the primary by moving it to the secondary. Currently, a customer can only read log data from the primary server for CDC. With this implementation, you'll be able to read the transaction logs from a read-only secondary server and not the primary as Informix source for CDC and apply that to the target, giving you one more feature that you can use on a secondary server, freeing the processing power on that primary server. We're doing create and alter database. Alter database will be new to Informix as an SQL statement for implicit transactions, owner qualified unique names, and cursors for update. This is Oracle compatibility involving ANSI mode databases where database objects are referenced by owner and .object notation. Transactions get implicitly created. All database rows queried are locked for update and other behaviors. Informix supports mode ANSI, but this is not the default mode, nor has this been widely used as a behavior. Mode ANSI is one of the things that I get very few queries about in my 37 years. Feature allows 3 mode ANSI behaviors to be defined in the non-mode ANSI Informix database. Informix running in non-ANSI mode should also deliver better overall performance than with mode ANSI. We're going to be adding the session ID to the audit log for our auditing. Currently, there's no way to correlate different entries or operations for the same session. We have the process ID, but for Java applications, this is not presented. In certain situations, it can be useful to cross-reference the audit log information with other traces of activity like logical logs, and these usually contain the session ID. So by default, you'll get a new style with an additional session ID, but as this might affect customers who are currently using automated software to process audit log records, we have added on-show audit -S, capital S setting, which will output records without the session ID. We're also going to allow indexes to be made invisible to queries. And this is also an Oracle compatibility item. Performance and safety win when removing unused indexes. The first step is to be able to make your index invisible to queries to analyze impacts. As the index is still being maintained by the server, the rollback to make the index visible again to queries is quick and painless. So we're not actually, it looks like here, planning to drop it. We're just going to make it invisible. So the question in my mind would be, why would it be that a lot of our customers have indexes that are unused? Well, there's two reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. One is that your data has changed significantly and the indexes created originally or somewhere along the line are no longer being used because the data has changed so much. That's one possibility. The second possibility is an old bug in Informix. Way back in the days when update statistics couldn't handle really big tables because there weren't enough buckets, customers would create lots and lots and lots of indexes because they were getting really slow performance because update statistics did not work properly. So they would create composite indexes, columns A, B, C, D, B, C, D, A, et cetera, et cetera. And in some extreme cases, I saw customers do that out to as many as 27 columns on an index. Obviously, that doesn't work. Having 27 indexes also doesn't work. And a lot of those indexes never get used. So with this, we can make them invisible if we don't want to drop them. Keep in mind, just because they're invisible doesn't mean that they're not sucking up performance. After all, when you insert a record, you're still getting the index created. So OnKStore was introduced during version 14. Is a utility that holds the key stores for encryption purposes. In 14.10, we support the request to move a remote key store to a local key store, but we not support the reverse operation, which is to take the local key store and move it to a remote location. The key store utility will now be supporting migrating a local key store to a remote key store. There's going to be updates to the global language support, GLS, phase 1. We're going to bring ICU Unicode support up to date, allowing application developers to utilize current standard code sets. Phase 2 will be coming once phase 1 is done. We have to define what that is just yet. Informix should not need root permissions. Informix will change the default installation to a non-root method, which will support multi-user access, but without the required root installation and process file ownership. Default access control will be via the authentication of users maintained by the database rather than operating system users. Enhancing the existing private server mode to support multi-user access and support all Informix functionality previously unsupported in private server mode. Existing root node installation will still be supported, but will not be the default mode. This is required for full non-root container support. So we'll be reactivating fixing our incremental archives by increasing the size of our system timestamp. We'll give you the ability to do incremental archives again. This is something that sort of fell apart along the way somewhere, and we're resuscitating it. Our apologies for that. Set schema is being introduced into Informix, supporting the switching of schemas in the middle of a transaction. Well, In Informix, we traditionally don't deal with schemas very much, but schema is basically an owner, whoever owns the object. And Informix's action is currently tied to the set session authorization operation, which is in effect for the duration of a particular SQL session and thus cannot change during that session. Currently, Informix must commit the current transaction and then start a new transaction with the new schema. In order to support the desired behavior, it's necessary to implement a new SQL operation that will support changing of the schema during execution of a single database transaction. Two new functions are coming: group concat, a function concatenating and merging the data from multiple rows into a single field. It is a group by function which returns a string if the group contains at least one non-null value, and if it doesn't, obviously it will return something that's null. Soundex, for Oracle compatibility, Soundex function returns a 4-character code which can be used to compare with the sound of other strings. The code represents the sound of the word in the argument. Informix HQ is getting some updates. For replication of enterprise replication, a point-and-click setup and monitoring of an enterprise replication cluster for increased usability and lowered complexity paths in the utilization of the best of breed of the enterprise replication functionality. So enterprise replication domain and replicates, we'll be able to view and create them. This gives us increased usability and lowering complexity. Internally, this was recently demoed for us. Upgrades, Java 17 and Gradle upgrades will occur. The admin password will be removed from the text file. The original one that you have to create in order to create passwords, that will be removed from the text file for you automatically. Ease of use, an enhanced online log, and an enhanced SQL editor that will be able to run multiple SQL statements at a single time. And finally, usability will allow us to do dark and light modes. Some performance enhancements. Performance will be better or equal than the prior release as of 14.1 XC1. We're looking into new compiler impacts, better scaling on Linux, improving storage performance. There'll be JDBC performance enhancements, JDBC query performance improvements, and memory use per statement reduced dramatically from 3.8 million, no, 3.3816 bytes to approximately 260,000 bytes per statement. I think there's a syntax problem there. There's also performance improved when querying CLOBs up to 2 times faster. User-defined routine, use and execution of UDRs will see general improvements in performance. And pagination queries are coming. Queries such as select with an order by and a skip and a first end we will create. A materialized query temporary table to keep the result set so that it doesn't redo the query every time you skip pages and is able to fetch the results from the cache. There's a new onConfig parameter coming, sort IO pages, IO size pages, configurable selection to be able to increase default 32 to 64 to 32K and 64 megabytes for a long query, which can improve the overall query time. Options are added to the autocast text or CLOB to long LVARCHAR for query performance. For a table with CLOB columns, we'll enable this with session environment variables shown here on the screen. the text columns, enabling it with the session environment variable shown here on the screen. Finally, multiple rows will be transferred in one SQLi call, improving the performance of the query with limits as shown here on the screen. VNext will have some new platforms that we're looking at and updated and refreshed to the latest releases of various different operating systems. AWS Graviton coming into the picture. HP Itanium is leaving the picture. AIX 7.2 and 7.3, various flavors of Linux, both big endian and little endian. System Z gets an upgrade. Spark, minimum update of 4 on version 11. Windows 18, Windows 19 through 2022, and Windows 10 and or 11. Containerized, all the containers have been moved to the IBM Container Registry at this point. We will not be sending containers to the Docker Hub any longer. That's a change. And we have continuous refresh on Cloud Pak for Data all year long. 32-bit clients will only be supported in 14.10 in VNext via the 4.1 CSDK product until the end of service on 4.1. Finally, so we can have some time for some questions, if you want to participate in the early adopters of a near infinite scale Informix VNext beta program, please send a note to me, and I'll be happy to arrange for you to get the VNext beta from nightly drops and that sort of thing. In the past, when we've had a new release, we've had customers participate in this program. If you'd like to participate, please send me a note. And my buddy. Any questions?
Scott, I have allowed all people to unmute themselves and to speak up.
Okay.
Do we have any questions? Do we have anything from Karen or from Cherie that they'd like to speak to the group?
Hey, this is Sri. Hey, Scott, thanks for taking us through this. No, I did not have anything separately to add. I mean, the intent was 14.10 XC10 is out and has GA'd already. So we just wanted to give a brief overview of what that included. And at the same time, as Scott mentioned before his presentation, just talk about what is planned for VNext and the subsequent releases of VNext. That was the intent. And I think, yeah, the format that we've used here is just basically identifying what are some of those changes that are happening, at the same time what's not going to change. But yeah, absolutely love any kind of feedback. If there are attendees on this call that they want to share anything that we've missed. Obviously the AHA, where we request feedback from customers as well as partners, that's always open. You've seen we've looked into some of those tickets and acted on it to bring those capabilities and features to VNext. But yeah, the hope here is what we've presented is something that was expected, and if there's something that you need to see more that we do around, as I said, right, either shared through right now, ask any questions, provide any feedback, or as I said, the AHA portal is always open. Karen, I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to add.
No, thank you. I think you guys have covered it quite a bit. Just always looking for feedback.
One thing I would ask of all of you is that if there are features that you would like to see in the product, please make an entry in AHA for it. All of you will get to vote on it. The entire worldwide Informix community will get to vote on it. You can talk about it on the community page, IBM for Informix. We'd love to hear what you have to say. As you can see from this particular presentation, we are paying attention to what you are asking for. And you will get, if there are enough votes, the feature that you asked for. Informix is alive and well and making money. Please understand that. We are interested in you. The Informix team is interested in you.
Completely agree, Scott. Nicely said.
I'd like to thank you all for attending, and keep in mind that we will be updating the recording to the IIG website. And we also, the next upcoming Text Talk will be on June 22nd, presented by Querix, I believe it is, on what their features feed. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Everyone, thank you, Scott.